Welcome everyone, this is your host Abraham L. Jaguar, a professional game master. First of all, this channel is proudly sponsored by Rome, the historical role-playing game. Experience the glory and decadence of Rome like never before. You will find it in the description and in the pinned comment. This channel is also proudly partnered with the What the Funk shop. Please check out their store for all sorts of products. They have dice, miniatures, game master screens, home decorations, and many other things. You will find the link in the description and in the pinned comment as well. And make sure that you use my code for a special discount. A moment, please, while I maximize. Mm, there we go. Um, Tonight, I wanted to talk about something, mm, a set of thoughts inspired by a great comment by Vite, one of my viewers. I think I will title this video Tips to Promote Roleplay During a Session because his comment encapsulates many things. So I did a bit like a video response to another comment that he made a while ago. The title of that video was Tabletop Role Playing Games Obstacles When You Are Trying to Experience the Fictional World. And Vite tells me, "Mm, keeping a journal is certainly one way I could improve my long-term awareness because Vite sometimes when a lot of time passes between sessions, sometimes he forgets the characters. So a good idea is to keep a journal. You don't need to have like an extensive collection of paragraphs for every single non-player character that you encounter, right? Just like the name of a non-player character or your own character, or player characters if you are controlling various player characters or playing as role-playing as various player characters, and a few lines or even just one line refreshing your memory. Very easy to do. And for a game master, of course, it is a must. It is very important for you to keep track of various important events that occur during the course of an entire campaign. And then Vite says, as for zoning out during the session, the way you describe all the empty talk is painfully accurate. In that video, I mentioned how there were so many unnecessary things during the session. It no longer feels as if you are playing a role and playing a game, but groups that do not understand roleplay or do not care about roleplay, they instead have a conversation about their characters, about the game world, about the game. Certainly, that is an obstacle to roleplay. You are no longer playing a role and you are no longer playing a game. You are having a conversation. Now, Vite says, there are times when new developments just before his turn, if they force him to reconsider and think his actions over. Yes, of course, that is understandable. When enemies die, when enemies get healed, when reinforcements arrive for the enemy forces or for your own forces, when the members of your group change position in the battlefield, those are all new developments and they happen constantly during a fight, combat scene, or even a normal expedition. Sometimes that also plays into the immediate outcomes. So you always need to reconsider and think your actions. But Vite says, I feel like most of my turns take under 30 seconds. Yes, usually like below 30 or 20 seconds, it is quite normal. And as long as you are role playing, there is no rush. You don't need to like hurry up and trip over your own words. Just start describing your actions. I throw my sword to the side and draw out my handgun and pointed at the enemy next to the crate. There you go. You didn't have to hurry up like and the if you're playing with decent people, they're not going to be like hurry, hurry, hurry. No. They're going to give you a chance to describe your actions and reactions. And you should always expect that. You are worth a lot. Your turn is worth a lot. So if they don't like it too bad, they will have to wait until you finish describing. because you're not doing it to prolong your turn. You're going to be describing things accurately in the most precise way, but you still want to describe things in a correct way. Of course, you don't want to describe something that is going to be disadvantageous for the combat turn or your actions that you are taking during an expedition, exploration, whatnot. And White says, but I frequently have to wait for other players to take minutes with their turns. And that's when the problem is quite evident. They take so long because they play it as if it's some sort of board game or conversation game or whatever or storytelling. Like I mentioned in the other video, so many clumsy moments of um, can my character do this? Can my character do that? What can I do? Let me take a look at the character sheet. Is it possible for me to cast this spell? Hold on. I'm going to take a 5 foot step. No, no, I'm going to move 30 feet towards. No, wait, no. And that's the responsibility of the game master. Most of the flaws in tabletop RPG sessions they have to do with the game master because he is not promoting that roleplay environment. If you see a player doing that, you hesitate too long thinking about your future actions and you move to the next player. Now, Bob has a chance to act. So it's up to the game master to stop that. Otherwise, you're no longer playing a role. You're like playing a turn based board game or video game, like very, very long with analysis paralysis of all of that. In tabletop role playing games, it's so easy. You don't need to explore your entire menu of spells and options and whatnot. It certainly helps to familiarize yourself with them. Just describe your actions, the spell that you are casting, the attack that you are carrying out. Describe it, and then the game master will call for a roll. You make a roll, and so forth. It continues smoothly. Fight speaks. I'm currently in two groups with many relatively new players who often need that extra time to figure out what they can do. Okay, even if you are new, there is no excuse. You know why? Because you only need to describe your actions. If you're a warrior, think about how you would attack your enemy, and then you describe that. Describe your attack. Describe your defensive maneuver. Describe the way that you flank. Describe. You don't need to take hours, and this is the fault again of the game master. Right? It sounds like you're in groups with terrible game masters or dungeon masters. Well, it's up to you, right? But I would get out of those groups quickly. It's not easy to find out groups that actually role play, but it's certainly worth it to instead spend time looking for those groups. And every now and then, I run sessions, of course. Keep an eye out for those sessions if you have a webcam and a microphone. Although, in some very rare exceptions, I give a pass when it comes to the webcam, but they have to be like really close acquaintances. In my current game of Cult Divinity Lost, we have two people without webcams. I guess they have their reasons as to why they are not showing their faces, but they are very close friends of my friends and sponsors, Miguel and Silvia. So I know that they are people that are there to roleplay, and they never have problems that they mute their microphone and they forget about it, and you don't know if they are muted because they don't have the webcam on, and you don't see them like talking and no sound comes out. But yes, I would recommend that it is better quality time is spent either looking for a group or creating your own group. Dungeon Master. And Vite says, from my previous experiences, I think it's also possible for new players to stay forever new. Exactly, they fall into that lazy comfort where everybody has to expect do everything for them, cater to their every flaws, to all of their flaws. Because, as in many activities, you can improve your flaws. Don't take hours, don't take 2 minutes for your turn. Describe your action and let things flow. It is better to roleplay and fail in character than not to roleplay and fail as a player, as I always say. One of my famous RPG sayings. And Vite says, never bothering to research their class or general mechanics. And right, and the research is very minimal. Those you want to eliminate those low effort people. That is, if you have them in your group, kick them out. If you're playing with a group filled with those people, like you have to ask yourself, is it worth it to play with them? Because they either have to learn the game, or if not, at least have like some cheat sheets, some perhaps their notepad or some notes in paper of the mechanics that they forget. If they keep forgetting, if they need to roll a d20 to carry out the checks, they have no excuse. They just need to write it on their hand if they need to write it anywhere, right? So that they don't forget. So it is their responsibility. You must respect the other people at the table. It is your responsibility as a player to understand the core mechanics of the system. And then Vite says, expecting hand holding from the dungeon master to fill in the gaps, or even from the other players. I'm certainly gonna look into your games further when I get the time. Yes, the cult session is a good starting point to see how things proceed. If you're looking for a Dungeon Master, Dungeons and Dragons examples, look for the Greyhawk campaign in my channel. The first session we actually had probably the worst player, yeah, the worst player that I've ever had in a session. We kicked him out after that session because everything that you have described, multiply that by 100 or 1,000. And then Evite says, but in that session, even though we had that obnoxious, disruptive, disrespectful player in the table in the session, he had to roleplay. He was forced to roleplay. You know why? We'll get into that into a few moments. A follow-up question, Vite says. How would you go about cultivating a group to play the way you describe, high roleplay, low noise, as a dungeon master? The most important thing as a dungeon master or game master, you need, no matter what they say, you do need some organizational or leadership traits. You're not leading the players into the scenario, but you need a firm hand. That is why you are sometimes called the referee, like in Traveler, the referee. A referee in sports, when he pulls out the red card, the yellow card, because there was an infraction against the rules. And in sessions, you're going to have rules concerning the system and rules concerning the roleplay. If there is an infraction, you need to penalize that. If everybody has agreed upon that you're going to be role playing in first person, that must remain consistent. If they are role playing in third person, that must remain consistent. Some sessions are very flexible, either first person or third person. If you're role playing, you're taking action in the present, in the now. It's not I'm gonna swing my sword. Yes, you were going to swing the sword, but you never took action in the present. In the present, never took action in the present. You were not swinging your sword. I am swinging my sword. I swing my sword at the enemy in front of me. Those are correct. But I am going to swing my sword. The moment I am going to swing, you get attacked. Just like in real life battle. Tabletop RPGs, you are experiencing the game world. It is a fictional simulation with roots on real life. In battle, you're not thinking, I am going to kick, you kick. I am going to punch, you punch. I will punch the enemy. Yes, you were about to do that. I will punch the enemy in front of me. Will, when you add will, that's the future tense. No. I throw a right hook at the enemy in front of me. Right? So every single time the player goes into the future, I want my character. So you wanted your character to do that, but you did not take action. You didn't take action. I want my character to jump. Okay, that's what you want, but are you doing it? Are you jumping? In battle, penalize them. As a dungeon master, they missed their turn. They took a penalty because they delayed their action. And then the player is going to get the message. If the participants suddenly start to talk out of character, start penalizing them. Do you have a sanity system? Apply sanity penalties because they are crazy. They are talking to no one. In particular, they're having a conversation with a game master that doesn't exist or a player that doesn't exist in the fiction. They should talk to non-player characters or player characters, right? So you need to penalize those things. When they start to ask you questions, can I look through the window? Who is that player talking to you? You suddenly find yourself talking to no one in particular. Instead of role playing, I look through the window, as simple as that. Does the object have strange cross like markings? Who are they talking to? You find yourself asking questions to no one. You need to role play. I pick up the object and examine it for cross like marks or features. All of that should be agreed upon before the session. If you're running things with Discord, set up some Discord channels to make that clear. Now, Vite says, I'm not a regular dungeon master, and the few times I did dungeon master a game, I don't think I did a very good job creating any magical space. But I would like to do a better job in the future. Yes, it's very easy, but it's not exactly your fault, Vite, because this has been explained horribly throughout the years. In tabletop RPGs, the main problem lies with the origins of role playing games. You had Dave Arneson, the father of role playing in tabletop RPGs, and you had Gary Gygax. So, Dave Arneson, father of role play. But his notes were absolute shit. His documentation of the role playing rules, terrible. And Gary Gygax, as much as he could, even though Dave Arneson ran a session for him in his Blackmoor campaign, Gary Gygax simply didn't have the understanding. Could be some sort of impediment. There are various things about Gary Gygax that make me think that he was not a very logical person. At least he was logical in game rules, but in everything else, and some people still criticize his rules. So Gary Gygax was not, he was a businessman, but in terms of tabletop RPGs, he wasn't good at understanding roleplay. He took Dave Arneson's chaotic notes and organized them into a workable system that to this very day, it is used as a base for many tabletop RPGs. That is good. But he never understood roleplay. Never ever understood it. He started with the whole, what do you do? What do you intend to do? What are your plans? And don't get me started on his Deus Ex Machina mechanisms to save his adoptive son, uh, Robert Coons, in the adventures. Suddenly, Robert Coons decides to go into one of the most dangerous dungeons solo, lone wolf, leaving the entire group behind, and he gets surrounded by whites. And suddenly, Gary Gygax, uh, make a roll. He rolled this. It was all a dream. You imagined everything. You're not in danger of dying. So yes, putting that aside, it is not your fault, Vite, if you didn't do a good job as a dungeon master. I will tell you how to do a good job as a dungeon master. The most important thing, like I said, is leadership traits. Don't care. You shouldn't care about what the players will think of you if you penalize infractions that you agreed beforehand that you were not going to do in a session. If you have already said that you're going to be role playing in first person, third person, mixed, and that you are actually role playing in the present, in the now, and suddenly someone decides to do otherwise. Analyze that. You find yourself talking to no one in particular. You are thinking about your actions in the future and miss your turn. If you respect yourself, respect the game, and respect others, don't feel bad about doing this. There are many dungeon masters and game masters that fail at this. They want everybody to like them, they want them to come back to the session, but they are living a lie. You're not role playing. You're having a conversation about the game. You're telling stories about the game. Little Timmy went into the cavern. Little Timmy saw a blue circle painted on the wall under the light of his torch. Little Jimmy or Timmy or whatever approached the wall and he started to touch the mark. And then a secret passageway was revealed. Now, you're not telling a story. The dungeon master presents a fictional situation. You are standing in front of a 2 meter tall stone monument shaped like a rectangle with the following inscription on it. The language is impossible for you to understand, but you barely recognize some characters from the ancient writing of the kingdom of Karnuna. And now the player is standing there, not doing anything. The game world is still moving. As you stare at the monument, you hear footsteps rapidly approaching. I wonder, is the player still standing there? If he decides to do that, a humanoid is seen from the corner of your left eye. He approaches you at a maddening pace and throws himself at you. At this distance, you can see the individual is of a greenish color with claws, horns, and blood dripping fangs. The player character is not doing anything. Maybe it's an automatic success. The humanoid jumps on top of you, tackling you to the ground, and slashes you. You take 10 points of damage. And if the player character dies because that player character is not doing anything, too bad. You can't just stand there paralyzed. And of course, don't get me wrong, you need to explain this before the session. You need to take a new player and tell the player, in the session, I am going to be describing a fictional scenario, and you can interact with that fictional scenario through your actions. And maybe the new player is going to tell you, and then what do I do? Now, do you read the basics of the rules? Maybe yes. Or if you know, maybe you took a complete newbie, like someone that doesn't know anything about role playing games. Tell that player, because you are new in this first session, I am going to tell you what to roll, the dice you see here. So you describe your actions. Let's say that this player was a bit more active. And the moment you describe that humanoid, player described, I turn around and quickly draw out my dagger as I step towards the humanoid and stab at his chest. Maybe the system doesn't allow you to take that action, that set of actions in the same turn. You manage to draw the dagger and you approach the humanoid, but you're not fast enough to stab him, right? But now the player has a chance, and you can inform the player later on. Maybe he survived that first turn, and the player describes, I stab at the chest of the enemy that is attempting to claw at me as quickly as I can. Roll the 20-sided die and say the result. 16. It's a hit. It's a miss. And you describe the hit or the miss. If it's a hit, your dagger plunges deep into the torso of your opponent. Green goo splashes out of the wound. If it's a miss, as you were attempting to do that, the creature slaps your hand to the side with its bloody claws. As simple as that. Now, Vite says, you outlined the general mindset in your creating the magical space video, but what are some hard and soft rules the dungeon master can use to steer players and themselves towards this playstyle? In the case of the players, like I said, penalize those moments when they are having out of character conversations, when they are going out of the present, if they are going in third person when the session was supposed to be carried out in first person, you start losing your mind, thinking of yourself as if you are some other individual, right? Penalize those moments. That is the only way. Otherwise, you are rewarding those actions. Unlike certain science fiction religion, YouTube this science fiction, unlike certain science fiction religions, rewarding the evildoers does not discourage them from doing the right thing. And in the case of tabletop RPGs, rewarding the ones that break the rules or commit infractions. Not that this is evil, but it is disrespectful for the roleplay that is about to be created. It is disrespectful for the people that want to roleplay in the table, including the dungeon master. You must penalize those infractions because otherwise the player is going to feel like, oh, well, I can keep on doing this and everything is going to go fine. No problem. There was this dungeon master from, I met him about a few years back. Let's call him Cyborg. Cyborg had more or less the correct notions of how to run a tabletop RPG, but for whatever reason, maybe he wanted some other people to like him. Every time they did this, the players committed infractions against the roleplay rules or even against the system rules. He let it slide, and the session that first started good ended up in the most mediocre conversation about the game imaginable. So, and Vite says, in the case of the dungeon master, you also have to steer yourself into roleplay by not validating those non-roleplay, how would you even call it, errors. Those errors from the player characters, you need to penalize them. So don't think about hard and soft. Forget about it. Now, one of my pals, I hope he corrected this bad habit of his in a long time ago, about 2 years ago, in a video. Oh no! If the players go into the dark room without using their torches, don't make them trip in the dark. It will hurt their feelings. Are you playing with like 5-year-old girls or what? A mature person is not going to get crushed or suffer a breakdown. If you describe that the character trips down the stairs because he forgot to turn the lights on before descending the basement in complete darkness, right? So yes, right, those are my recommendations. It's all about, like I said, don't get worried, don't feel too worried about, oh no, but if I do this, they're going to hate me. Well, too bad. If you want a role play session, you're going to enforce those rules, penalize those infractions. They were out of line because it was agreed beforehand that they were going to role play and play a game in a tabletop role playing game session. So I hope this was useful, right? I hope this was informative and entertaining for everyone. Mm, don't forget to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. And thank you so much to those of you that are going the extra mile to support the channel. If anyone else wishes to further support the channel, consider joining as a member using the super thanks button. Take a look at the information in the description, the pin, the comment. This has been your host, Abraham L. Jaguar. a professional game master. And remember, roleplay solves everything. Once again, thank you and see you later.